You know, don't come back with that. And the next week it'd be in the rules. And when we started, the rule book was about that thick. At the end of '96, the rule book was that thick.
We're here in the mountains with Mike Skinner and Angie Skinner, and they got this pretty cool truck in here. What's the story behind this thing?
We were lucky enough to win the first championship in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Ran 95, 96 in trucks, and then went to the Cup Series in '97. Richard kept 2 trucks. One of the trucks was the very first truck, the one that we was sideways off of 4 at Phoenix and beat Terry Labonte for the first points race. That truck was really heavy. It was a sled, and I started like hammering them, like we got to get lower, lighter, left, or you know, we just start let's build short track stuff. I was a late model guy, so my stuff was all full of holes and tricked up, and we worked hard on very conscious about weight. We built this truck. It was probably well over 100 pounds lighter than the first one.
What about this one was different than the first one that you said was heavy, like the specific areas you worked on?
Stuff like this. I mean, you see everything scaved out. You know, all this stuff's lightened up. There's a lot of stuff that, you know, that we always tried to hide back in the past, but not now. But underneath the tonneau, all the reinforcements all hollowed out, and you know, we went into savings mode on weight, and you know, we still had to weigh the same amount, but when you can put it in the frame rail instead of the roof, it's big, and it was just technology moving along. And I'll tell you, the cars that Dale Sr. was driving and winning in, they were heavy compared to like some of the Hendrick stuff and some of the other teams, and it just makes me respect him all the more because he didn't have the best cars all the time, but he was still winning races. And when all this came about, we hired some really smart people, guys like Jesse Koch and Johnny Seiler and Todd Barrier and Rich Burgess was a late model guy. He ended up being my crew chief in '95. Those guys were all smart racers. Richard, you know, who do you want to hire? And we got together about who we were going to hire, who's going to be the crew chief, and we put a team together. Will Lynn was the team manager, which worked on the 3-car for 100 years. Through all of Dale's championships, Will Lynn was there. David Smith was involved. All these people were really good racers, really smart racers, and it brought the whole RCR up. It not only brought the truck side up, it brought the Cup side up. And I think it made RCR a lot more competitive.
I was just thinking, with the truck series being so new and you're starting out and you get creative with stuff, you got a pretty light rule book, I would imagine, because they're not exactly the same as a car. And it hasn't really been exploited and bolstered up by people, you know, coming up with stuff. So you can't do that anymore, add this, add that. Did you have any rules? It
was basically like a Cup car, chassis and suspension, motor, everything, with truck sheet metal on it. And so that's basically how it started out. And when we started, the rule book was about that thick. At the end of '96, the rule book was that thick. And it was just from us, you know, you can't put light roll bars in anymore. You can't do this, can't do that. We never got busted, but we got our hands slapped a lot, and you know, don't come back with that. And the next week it'd be in the rules, and we started moving the tails over on them and the nose over that way. Don't do that anymore. Okay, well, we just kept pushing the envelope as hard as we could, and the rule book just kept getting thicker and thicker and thicker. It was just innovating. It wasn't cheating. It was like you read the rule, you interpret the rule, and you go, okay, well, don't say anything about this. Well, hell, it don't say anything about that either. So let's do this and that. And if, you know, I've always told my boys, they were racers, and it's not, there's no magic wand that you come wave over a race car. Kyle Larson's car at North Wilkesboro, the 24 car is the same car. You know, he just had it figured out. It's the 100 little tiny things that you do from bumper to bumper, from top to bottom. And then the engine shop, same thing. It's not always the engine that makes the most power on the dyno that's your best race engine. You have to, it's a big package. Like at Martinsville, we used to detune the bottom end of the engine and put it on the top ends like a dragster motor, because you just spin the tires off the corner with all the torque. So we would kill the motor a little bit on bottom and let it haul ass down the straightaway. All those little bitty things add up to success if you put it all together and make it work. So that's just kind of what we did, and it's evolved over the years. And aerodynamically, this truck in the wind tunnel actually had about 50 pounds at 130 mile an hour wind of lift, and everybody said, oh, they're going to be real light in the back. Well, actually, it had so much pressure the first time we went to the wind tunnel, it pushed the back window in and caved in the tonneau cover, because the air hits the spoiler, curves back, it hits the cabin. You get all your downforce, right? Which is wonderful. As time went on, we learned how to shift it so we could balance the front and back. And nowadays it's they got a lot of downforce. Later, as it evolved, we just got more and more downforce with the trucks, and we found out how to balance it front to back. And we did I wasn't in the 3 truck at this time. I was in the 5 truck when I started driving for Toyota. Went to Dover one time, and Jimmy Johnson owned Dover. And we ran at exactly the same time as the Cup car. And I'm like, how in the hell does that happen? The truck's got all that drag in it. We were 9 miles an hour faster through the corner, and Jimmy was 9 miles an hour up straightaway, faster than we were. It was because of all the downforce. And but like I said, this particular truck, they drove terrible because it actually had lift. So it wanted to push the front wheels getting in the corner and then sideways off the corner, and you had to manhandle it and drive the hell out of it. And it's just insane how it's evolved over the years.
Is that why when the Cup guys came down in the early years of the truck series, you would just stomp them because they weren't used to that?
I don't know about stomping them, but we beat them. Hornaday beat them. And a couple of my iconic wins was beating Terry Labonte, passing him on the last lap at Phoenix, and then beating Ernie Irvin for the second win at Phoenix. Those guys were pretty big time. They were big names, and they were champions and run good in the sport. Ernie won a bunch of races. Terry was a champion. It was just, we drove, and I don't know that it's ever changed. We drove like our life depended on it. And you go watch a truck race now, and those guys in the front, man, when they're on their game, when that restart comes, boom. William Byron has a hard time keeping up with those guys on the restart. It's just that intense, and they beat and bang. And the difference is nowadays we would push each other out of the way a lot and beat and bang, but we wouldn't just go in there and wreck somebody to win. And nowadays that's a given. They're going to do that to win a race. They're just going to wreck you. And that part of it I'm not crazy about, but the rest of it was just amazingly fun because we had rivalries. Like Ron Hornaday and I would beat the hell out of each other. I'll show you a setup I have in my trophy case over there. I still razz him about. 20 minutes after the race, I wanted to kill him. 20 minutes after the race, he'd be at my motorhome, or I'd be over at his. We'd be drinking a beer together. Like the damn coyote and the dang sheepdog. Kind of watching over the nest. So that was, a lot of the guys like Jack would hold a grudge. If you touched him, oh my God, he wouldn't speak to you for 3 months. But Hornaday and I always just gave each other so much hell and worked each other over every week, but we remained friends. And it was cool last weekend to go and hang out with him at the racetrack, and he got to be the grand marshal and, gentlemen, start your engines, and I got to wave the flag coming back to Wilkesboro. 27 years ago, I was on the pole at Wilkesboro. So it was pretty darn cool. That was the truck.
I'm just looking at this thing now. You said they had the seat in there the way you had it and stuff. Is it just my eye, or is it kind of cocked a little bit?
Oh, it's definitely cocked, because when you slam into the corner, you want it to push you down, not over. And that's still pretty common. It just doesn't have the head and neck safety, the ribs support right there. You're a big guy, I'm a big guy. If you hit with that thing, it would just straighten that out, and it'd break your ribs. And Steve Park broke his femur because of these little cheesy little leg braces. Now they go all the way down to the front. You're basically in a capsule nowadays. Over time, tons of crashes, tons of data from the crashes, tons of sled tests that NASCAR did. It was pretty loose But when we lost Dale, that woke up. That woke NASCAR up. It was like we've just lost our Elvis. We've lost the biggest name in the sport. And they started pouring money into technology, sled test, crash test. They were taking things and making every kind of crash you could make, molding the seat and the cockpit around the safety for the driver. And then as time went on, they started putting soft walls in and making the racetracks safer. So kudos to NASCAR for making our sport where, I kind of had to retire in 2012. I just had so many concussions and my body was so beat up. And my doctor said, you can't take a whole lot more. If you want to, watch your grandkids grow up, you need to probably get an exit strategy. And nowadays, these kids can have big wrecks, step out, go back to their motorhome, and go play golf the next day because of the safety.
Back in this era, were these frames built symmetrical, or were they offset? Like the front clips, the frame rails, that kind of stuff.
No, it was then and still is. It's what we call a perimeter chassis. Like the Pro Lates and the Super Lates, it's offset chassis with a straight frame rail down the right side, and then a perimeter frame rail on the left side. These are still perimeter cars. They're the weight balance. You can only have 55% on the left, 45 on the right. Where the Super Late models like 58 or 60% left side weight. They don't allow the NASCAR vehicles to do that. So, it's a perimeter. The perimeter chassis, it's harder to get left side weight percentage because you have all this framework out here, but it's a ton safer. And I think that's NASCAR's goal there. And the reason behind the perimeter chassis is the safety.
So the front clip was symmetrical also. It wasn't like offset to, because then they start doing that in later years. They'd have front clips that were more favored to turn left
until they're still not allowed to do that. They still have to be symmetrical in the front. Now there's a tolerance. And so of course everybody pushes the tolerance as far as it can go. Nowadays, with the new car, the next gen car that they're racing now, they're all the same. All the frames are the same. We used to have this truck, not this truck, but we had another truck that was really super light that Todd Barrier built. The team built it, but Todd kind of engineered it. And it was so light that you'd have to, even if you didn't hit anything, you'd have to change the front clip about every 4 races because it was so light, it would just flex so much, the chassis would go to hell. So you just basically had to, it was good for about 1,500 miles. And then you had to just cut the frame off and put a new one on. But it hauled ass. It was lightweight and went good. NASCAR really watches that stuff now. It's a little harder to get by with stuff like that nowadays.
Does this truck still have an engine now?
Yep.
Still got it in there?
Yep. Yeah, it's just like it came off the track, basically. This was the one year they had this stupid rule. They had this air cleaner like that, and these deals came up to the headlights. These hoses came up to the headlights, and you got your air from that. It was a dumb rule. It didn't work. I think they only did it 1 year and they outlawed it, but this was the particular year when they did it like that.
When the truck series started, were they 9-to-1 engines?
Mm-mm. Nope, 12.5.
Huh. Yeah, I wondered how that worked. Didn't they go to 9-to-1 at some point or talk about it?
I think they might have talked about it. I don't think they ever did it.
So it was just the Busch series that went 9-to-1.
They did a what they call a tapered spacer to pull horsepower out of it. Once we got to about 850, 860 horsepower, we were going to racetracks. Like I sat on the pole at Martinsville in the truck series and would have been third in the Cup race. And NASCAR went, whoa, hang on. We cannot have the trucks faster than the Cup cars. The Cup cars, the Premier Series, and they've got to be faster than the trucks. So they pulled about 75 horsepower out by putting a tapered spacer underneath the carburetor. And it didn't slow us down very much. We got them going so good through the corners that the straightaways on short tracks you wasn't on the straightaway long enough. So we were still pretty close to the speeds of the Cup cars.
It's interesting to see, like, looking at these older chassis versus the newer ones, is how tiny the sway bar tube is compared to the more modern.
Oh yeah, that
ones.
sway bar. You couldn't put no more than about 1 1/8" sway bar in this thing, and nowadays it's like 2.5 inch sway bar that they'll have in there. It'll have a 3-inch tube on it. And look at the size of the springs. I mean, that's probably a 1,000-pound spring or 900-pound spring. Now you'd run a 350-pound spring there with a bump stop, or a 400-pound spring there.
Did they ever get into doing bump stops in trucks when you were still running them?
They were not allowed. They are now.
Or coil bind?
We coil bound. You know, Jeff Hensley and I, when I came, we never coil bound in the 3 truck. When I came back in 2004 and drove for Toyota, Jeff Hensley and I, we would coil bind the left front spring, and we wore them out in a bunch of places. And everybody started, in the Cup Series, they started coil binding the right front. And we were having a lot of success doing what we were doing, but it was hurting the aero platform so bad. The thing would go down straight away and the nose would be that high off the ground. And when you was on the right front, it would keep it sealed up. And so we eventually had to go and figure out how to do it on the right front. And we did. And, you know, it just, nowadays, the difference in the travel from all the way down to all the way up is very little. As a matter of fact, the Goodwood truck that we built, it was about 500 thousandths of an inch. These things are probably still a couple inches, but it's big, the difference in travel. We hardly had any travel at all in that thing. It was just like an Indy car or a Formula One car, the way it was. And the whole bottom was all panned. Totally illegal for NASCAR.
That's the Goodwood, the special.
Yeah, the special.
Which that truck, you might have to come back and check that out. It might be up here. Our friend Jimmy Walker purchased
next year or so, yeah.
Yes, and it's right next to the park where you saw those big man caves.
Yeah.
He's got a collection of some old stock cars.
Big time multi-million-dollar collection. It's
Yeah.
crazy, the cars he's got. A lot of Corvettes, a lot of really historic cars, and pretty much all of them are Resta mods though.
Is that the truck that was in the viral video of you doing Goodwood?
Yes.
That all the European people were like, oh my God, I can't believe a NASCAR truck can do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
That
now
one.
Truck 10 was in one of those viral videos.
Yeah, we won.
There's 2
I
of
broke
them.
my own record 4 times.
Yeah, every year we
Which
had
I
to
still
go
have,
faster.
still have the record, but the special took it to a new level. It was a couple seconds faster.
That went 47 seconds.
It was in the 47s, which is that's hauling butt up a 1.2 mile driveway.
When you went up to the Cup Series in the Lowe's car, who drove this truck?
Jay Sauter. Jay Sauter took my place, and he had a lot of success, did good, won races, and then they had 2 or 3 other drivers, and then the Dillon boys got old enough to drive, and they started driving in the Truck Series. And but Jay Sauter was the one that replaced me when I left, and they you know, some of the trucks they kept and they redone for Jay, but this truck was special. So Richard kept it in a barn forever. It was just all kind of crappy, and I think Angie kept working on it and said, when are you going to give Mike that truck? And so one year for Christmas, Richard decided
No, it was for your retirement.
it was for my retirement,
Yeah.
but it was a Christmas present, whatever. Why don't you tell the story?
Well, Mike didn't have one of his trucks that he raced. You know, a lot of NASCAR drivers have one of their favorite cars. The car owner usually gave him something, and like Rusty Wallace, Penske gave him a bunch. I know Harvick even had some cars from Childress, and I'm like, dude, we don't even have a Lowe's car, we don't have a truck, and we'd really like to have one of those trucks, because that's where Mike really honed his name in the Craftsman Truck Series, being the inaugural champion of the series. And he kept going, well, it's in the Hall of Fame. Don't you want it in the Hall of Fame? It's in the Hall of Fame. I'm saving it for that. And I was like, I don't really care, Richard. I just want one of them trucks for Mike. So I was constantly harassing him for one of these trucks, and I think it was in 2012. Mike had decided he wasn't going to race Cup anymore, or trucks or anything. And so I was actually working for Ryan Newman at the time, and Ryan was driving for RC. And I had to have a meeting with RC, and I'll never forget, it was at the Kansas racetrack. And I walked in his bus, and we had our meeting about Newman, and I'm like, now when are you gonna let me have that truck? And he goes, Angie, just hold on, and I go, whatever, and I kind of got mad, mad at him.
In the meantime, he got the truck that was in the Hall of Fame back out, put it in his museum. This truck was still sitting in the bar.
I don't think his truck was ever in the Hall of Fame.
Yes. Anyway, go
we
ahead.
need to research that, because this one ended up being in there.
For 5 years.
Yeah, so anyway, I walked out of the bus, and I wasn't mad at him, but I was like, come on, man, that'd be the coolest deal, because that year for our New Year's party, we had a big barn in Statesville where we had all the trophies and stuff. And the theme for our New Year's party that year was old school racing, like back in the day racing. And I had a bunch of old truck race drivers come in, and some crew chiefs and bunch of our friends. And I'm like, wouldn't that be so cool if we could have that and surprise Mike? And I'm thinking, he's not gonna budge, So I walk out, he called my cell phone. Ange, what? He goes, I'm gonna give you that truck. I'm gonna give Mike that truck. I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, but it's gotta be my way, and I'm gonna organize it, and I want to organize everything. I'm like, yes sir, whatever you want to do. So about a month later, Danny Lawrence called me over at Richard Childress Racing, and he said, what have you done to get this 3 truck from RC? And I was like, I've been begging for 3 years, Danny. He goes, he's pulled it out of the barn, tires are flat. He told us to get it to look exactly like it looked when Mike raced it in 1995. Didn't they even look up?
Down to the setup, down to
the seat
position, the seat belts, the mirror. He said the only thing that'll be different about that truck from the last time he drove is it won't have champagne spilled all over it. And from Victory Lane, and basically told Angie he was going to deliver it, he was going to do it. And Richard and we've always been close. We're still close. When they were loading it, apparently he got a little bit choked up and said, I can't do it.
He said, I can't do it. So we were like, what do you mean? And Danny said, I'm going to bring the truck. I'm still bringing the truck, because we had organized it as a surprise for Mike. He had no idea that we were...
I know nothing about it.
He knows nothing about it. In fact, the day before the party, we staged that people were coming to help us decorate. And so Mike had no clue. He just thought, because he was like, why are all these people showing up?
Why
is Wayne and Libby coming?
Why are they all here a day early?
Well, Wayne said, I'm bringing you some old Winston Cup and truck racing NASCAR memorabilia for your party to decorate. I'm like, so he goes, oh, that's cool. So that's how we got away with that one. Our other friends that were from out of town, I basically said, well, they don't have anything to do tonight. They drove all this way. They're kind of from out of town. So
open up some wine.
Yeah, open up some wine. Let's get some pizza. Let's decorate for the party. He's like, all right. So he's upstairs, and they're setting things out. Wayne and Libby show up, and that's when Danny said, RC didn't make it. He didn't make it. I'm like, what? What do you mean RC didn't make it? He's like, well, he got choked up. He's afraid he'd get choked up. So I was like, okay. He goes, so I'm going to drive it up the hill. We have this big, steep driveway.
We're in Statesville. And I had built this big, I guess you'd call it barn dominium. It was a man cave. It was like $1 million man cave. It was really tricked out. Bus parking, bus wash, all my hot rods, all the trophies was in there. We had a lot more trophies. We gave a lot of trophies away when we came up here. It was really, really trick. And she yells at me. She goes, hey, come down here. Come down here. I'm like, what do you want? She goes, I want you to help me with this.
And he's always on that. He's like, oh, Angie. I'm like, just come down here. Because we know Danny's like radioing in going, I'm coming around the corner. Because we wanted it to be driven up the hill.
So I walked outside and I heard the motor. And here it comes flying around the corner, hauled ass down the hill.
He about missed the driveway.
And he about missed the drive because the brakes were cold. And it was racing brakes. You got to warm them up before they'll stop. And he slid that thing in there and pulled it up there. And I'm telling you, it was quite a moment for all of us because, guys like myself and Hornaday and Jack Sprague and, the list goes on, Bill Sedgwick, Ruttman. There's a bunch of truck guys that, we weren't big names in the sport. And Ron and I, hell, nobody knew who we were. And all of a sudden, we started beating all the Cup guys, and we started winning races, and we got this big rivalry going between us, and it was priceless. So we ran every lap like our life depended on it, because we were trying to get to the next level, and it was just special. And the first 2 years, we won 8 races each year out of 20 or 22, something like that. 15, 16 poles in a couple of years, and we really was dominant, really ran good, and to get that truck was pretty special to me. I think that picture is with the very first truck, which is in his museum, and that picture is this truck. And that's truck 1 at Sonoma. So there's just so many cool memories of it, and it is so antique compared to what they have nowadays. It's
The
insane.
safety, the seats alone are.
Yeah, I look at that seat. I took Angie to the museum and showed her truck 1 which is in Richard's museum, and I said, "Look at this seat." I said, "NASCAR wouldn't even let you in the gate with that nowadays. That's I wouldn't drive the thing to the grocery store. It's not safe." Technology's came a long ways.
When they brought it, Wayne Otten actually didn't he bring you some sort of?
Yeah, I got the setup. This is from the Hall of Fame when they brought it back.
It sat
in
on
the Hall of Fame all through COVID and through all. It sat there for 4 or 5 years. They were only going to keep it for a year, and they ended up keeping it for 4. Everybody loved it. Everybody that went in the Hall of Fame just oohed and awed over it. So I let them keep it for quite a while, and then when I got this place done, when we did the polished concrete, and I did the flag for it, and got trophies set up in here, and we were getting ready to have an event here, and I called them up and said, "Hey guys, I gotta have my truck back. You can keep my championship trophy for a couple more years, but I gotta have my truck back." So they sent it up here. Of course, the very first truck that we won, the very first race was super special. The Richard, it was the very first one they built. It was the one that we announced when we was going to go into the Truck Series at Rockingham in '94. So it's like, I don't think Richard will ever let that go.
that one's in his museum.
It's in Richard's
at the
museum.
Richard Childress Racing Museum. But the NASCAR Hall of Fame,
This truck was
on the when you first walk in the Hall of Fame, they've got that
Glory Road.
yes,
thing.
Glory
Yeah.
Road, and it sat there on Glory Road for about 5 years.
Yeah, that truck was in there for a year, I think, and then Richard took it out and put it in his museum. I'm pretty sure it was.
I'm going
Okay.
to challenge you on that.
All right.
I'm going to call Winston Kelly and I'm going to ask him.
He would know.
He would know.
You're usually right, and I'm usually wrong.
Well,
so
the
we'll
only
see.
reason why is because Richard was waiting.
Except for this time.
Richard was waiting for the Hall of Fame to call, and that's why he kept telling me he wouldn't give me that truck. Because he goes, well, what if the Hall of Fame calls? I'm keeping one in my museum and the other one's for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And I was like, well, if the Hall of Fame wants it, I'll let them use it. And lo and behold, we only had that truck for a year, and the Hall of Fame did call, and they were
Yeah.
like, could we put that truck in there? So we let him do it. And the way
And then
they
they
do
just
it's
kept
kind
on
of cool.
extending it. I'm like, wait a minute, you can't have it forever.
Yeah. But it is kind of cool how the NASCAR Hall of Fame does that. They call you up. They've got your Japan trophy right now still in your championship, the 1995 championship trophy there, which we need to get both of those back. They'll give you a contract. You have an agreement with the Hall of Fame, and they'll come pick it up. They're first class the way they
Oh,
do
yeah.
it. They
They
come
do
pick
it
it up in
right.
a trailer. They insure it while it's there, and then they deliver it back to you when the lease or whatever you want to call it is up. So it's kind of a cool process to be involved with.
I kept the paperwork when they brought it back.
Well, I think that's that setup. I'm looking for the setup information
No,
that Wayne
this ain't-
Otten gave you.
this
Where's
is
that
not the
paperwork
setup.
at?
It's in our junk somewhere.
No, I kept it in the seat of that truck.
Well, it's not there, so you must not have. This was the contract for the
Oh, the Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
To clarify for some people of the internet, Dale Earnhardt never drove this truck.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
And Dale did not
I drove
know
his car
that.
though. I drove the 3 car, but he never drove the truck. And when we were teammates, when I drove the 31 car, whenever we would test, Richard had a agreement with both of us that before the test was over, Dale would get in the 31. So Dale drove the 31 a lot, and I would get in the 3. And just to feel each other's setups, because a lot of times they'd be set up completely different. And there'd be, things that I liked about his setup. There's things I didn't like about his setup, and vice versa. So then the crew chiefs could get together and put all the data together and say, this is what Dale thought of Mike's car, and this is what Mike thought of Dale's car. And they would pull little bits and pieces out that would help both cars. So, Dale was not into having a teammate. He was having a ton of success. It was in that era where teammates were just starting to happen, and Hendrick Motorsports was one of the first. There was a few guys that beat us to the dance on being teammates. Two heads are better than one, and if you got two teams working together, and you get to the racetrack, it's like, okay, the 3 car is going to try a bigger front bar. Mike's going to try a different set of rear shocks. Well, the sway bar didn't work, but the shocks gave it more forward bite. All right, we'll take those shocks, put them on 3 cars, see if Dale likes them. Well, if he likes them, then we'd build another set, we'd both run them. And same thing with the sway bar. Sway bar that worked really good for the 3 car. Well, let me try it. Not always it worked for me, and not always what I did worked for him, but a lot of times it did. And when it did, you really realized how having a teammate was an asset, and you could help each other. And he helped me a lot with lines around like Daytona. Man, he helped me a lot. He took me around there and rent a car and says, the pavement's wore out there. This is where everybody's going to run. And late in the run, you're going to start pushing the nose because the right front tire is going to be wore out. So when you can avoid this little spot right here, it's about that wide. When you can avoid that, avoid it early in a run. When you need it, you're going to have to run through it. And so he taught me a lot. And then I helped him at places like Texas. I was really good at Texas. And, I got in his car and showed him some stuff about the racetrack. And unfortunately, we lost him right about the time that we both actually was helping each other a lot, and realized the value of having 2 teams was way better than having 1 team. And it's such a shame that we lost him when we did, because I really, truly in my heart believe that I would have won a lot of races, and I think he would have won another championship. So we'll never know.
If you could do us a favor and leave the thumbs up on this video, it would help a lot, and it doesn't cost you anything to do it. Also, almost have the body work done on the race car, getting ready for primer. That's a spoiler alert for those of you who know what it is. If you don't, we're going vintage short track racing, and there will be videos about that car too. What kind of cool stuff you have in these cases? You talked about
Well, just some of the memories. We had lap leader awards for years, and we got a lot of pole trophies, and Daytona poles, and that's a Martinsville clock from winning Martinsville. I won Martinsville 4 times. Richmond, just one of the coolest races in 2009. I think it's my last truck win, right, Angie?
Yes.
So we were about a 4th place truck, or 5th place truck, and they started doing this stuff, and they kept having restarts. Next thing you know, I won the race. This was at Michigan. I kind of blamed Goodyear for that, but it wasn't their fault. We found out later they had done a shock change, and the guy didn't get the bolt tight in the bottom of the shock, and it came off and punctured the right front tire going into turn 1. They found that shock in the top of the grandstands. Thank God it was practice and there wasn't anybody up there. I mean, it could have killed somebody. So we're lucky there. This is a unique deal. That's the gear set. That's 3rd gear out of the Motegi win in Japan. We were shifting, and we're fast. And we had an in-car camera, and they showed that in-car camera the last practice that showed me shifting. The next morning there was 21 transmissions laying on the ground, everybody changing 3rd gear so they could shift. So
really,
like, dang it. But we won anyway. That was cool. This is a neat deal right here. Somebody's moved this because they came and cleaned. So I was giving Hornaday a hard time. These trucks are always like this. You see the spoiler all bent up right there. That son of a gun hit me again. He's always crashing me. But a couple of my heroes, obviously, I got Hornaday on the top of the pedestal there, and Jack Sprague on the top there, and just good memories. I mean, stuff you don't forget.
When I was growing up, going to races in the early 2000s, the truck races were more fun for me to watch than the Cup ones, like the truck races.
Well, they still are.
Yeah, I love the truck series when I was little. So guys like you, that I think that's kind of what's missing now, is there needs to be a Mike Skinner, a Ron Hornaday, somebody who's like the guy, or a couple guys to kind of like anchor it.
Somebody will come along. I mean, you know, a Corey Heim, or you know, maybe one of the Gray boys. Somebody's going to come along and shine, and it's harder. But I agree. They miss a little bit of personality. But I still love watching the trucks. It's still fun to watch. This was kind of a mic drop moment for me. I won the U.S. Short Track Nationals in my son's late model car in 2019 at Bristol. And we sat on the pole, and we ran about 4 or 5 laps, and they all crapped. We drew a pill to see where you actually get to start, which started 10th, which I don't like that. If you sit on the pole, you should be able to start first, but whatever. We ran in, they crashed and knocked the left front tire off and knocked the master cylinder reservoirs off, and so I had no brakes. Came in the pits, my son said, "We're done." I said, "No, this will probably be the last race I run in this car, and put a tire on it. I'm gonna, you know, I don't need any brakes. I'm at Bristol." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're crazy." And I came back from dead last to 16th and got a caution. I said, "Now put some reservoirs on this thing, because caution laps don't count in that race." And they did. And right before it got 1 to go, they were just getting ready to bleed the brakes, and they said 1 to go. So I had to start dead last again. Didn't get to bleed the brakes. I still didn't have any brakes. And we came from the back again, came all the way around, took the lead, and drove away. And when that race was over, I'm like, "Okay, I'm good. That's how it's done, boys. I don't want to do it anymore, because then I'll make a fool out of myself. I don't know if I can do
forgot
it."
to mention you were 61 years old.
Yeah, I was
I
I was probably the oldest guy in the race by 20 years.
Yeah.
I just saw the Rick Crawford truck back there. That reminds me, aside from what Rick is known for recently, back then my dad knew his manager, and I used to climb up in there and poke buttons in his backup truck. So that was kind of my first introduction, hands-on, stand 2 feet away from a pipe and have it turn on, and you're like, I'm ruined. The rest of my life is this.
Well, we loved Rick. As a matter of fact, we gave Rick a job working for the team that we had in Florida, and that he was working for us when he got in trouble. But we all loved Rick. Rick was a great guy and good racer. He did a good job for us when he was with us, and it was unfortunate what happened to him. But things happen. Life goes on. This was a fun moment. I beat Dale Jr. by about 6 inches at Daytona. That was kind of neat.
Where did you learn how to draft at? Because when you came to the Cup Series, you were up there already. You know, coming from short tracks, super speedways. Did you just pick up on it quickly?
Yeah.
Because I love watching old plate races, and you're always up there.
Yeah. I just really feel like I was good at hiding in the air and letting the car suck up, what you call it. And then I was good at being able to get the nose out one way or the other to get enough air on it to give it some downforce so it didn't burn the front tires off of it. So I really, it's like road racing. I'm a really good road racer, and I have no idea why. I had no background of it, no family that did it. It was just a couple of things about racing that I picked up really, really good at. You know, I was pretty good at dirt, and the racetracks that I really struggled with before my career was over, I kind of halfway got them figured out. We'd go to Darlington, we'd be in the top 5 every time in practice, and in qualifying, we'd always qualify up front. The race would start and we'd be a bag of crap. I'm like, oh my God, you know, and I think I was just overdriving it so much and just trying so hard and not listening to Darrell Waltrip and Benny Parsons and people that had done it 100 times. And I was trying to race cars and you know, you got to race the track, not the people so much at Darlington. And it's not changed yet. I don't care how good you are at that place, you got to have a good car. And I think I always had a pretty good car, and it was on me. I don't think I was good there. And toward the end, actually, when I drove for Larry McClure, I got the place figured out, man. We qualified up front. passing for second. Really felt like we had a chance to win the race in the 4 car, and the motor blew up. And it was just really, really unfortunate. The motor blew up a lot the short time I drove that car. It was a shame because those cars were really good. They were some of the nicest cars I ever drove. Larry was pretty good to work for. It's a shame that our relationship went south over the lack of success, and the lack of success wasn't necessarily performance on the track. It was we couldn't finish a race because the oil was always running out the dang bottom of the motor. So it's a shame. It's a shame. And I felt bad for the team. I felt bad for Rut Pittman and all the guys in the engine shop, because those guys had a lot of success and their motors were good. And it just somehow or the other they got in a slump there. And I think time passed them by a little bit. And Childress and Hendrick and some of the others in Penske, they were just better than we were under the hood. So it is what it is now.
We did do a video with him, and he talked about that looking back, he probably should have moved the team to North Carolina and leased engines from somebody. So that was interesting to hear.
I need to watch that.
I guess we probably told him that 2,500 times.
Well, no, tell him that you did give him to lease one time, and it was just an unfortunate.
I got him to lease a Hendrick motor one time, and we picked up a half a second and was competitive, and the motor blew up.
Huh. So he's like, oh, this doesn't work.
That doesn't mean, hell, they blow up just like mine, so it doesn't matter. It was a shame. I think they could have pulled off, like I said, those were some of the nicest race cars I ever drove. I think they could have pulled off keeping the team in Abington. I think that they should have, when they lost the success under the hood, they should have started leasing motors. In this day and time, I don't think they'd even think about building their own motors. They would do a Hendrick motor or a ECR motor.
Before we give the shout out for all of your subscribers, which you have a ton, by the way. You guys have a great number. Kenny Wallace called me last week. He was giving me YouTube 101 school, trying to help us out for what we're doing now, and he loves you, by the way. He was saying, my buddy Mitch, you gotta hang out with my buddy Mitch and do a video. And but you mentioned something. This is my big pet peeve in NASCAR. A lot of NASCAR fans don't understand this, so this is going to be your NASCAR 101 education. Even at Wilkesboro this year, a lot of people said, when you drove for Dale, I'm like, he never drove for Dale. So the number is owned by the team owner, not the driver. Now we all recognize.
It's actually owned by NASCAR.
Well, yeah, correct. It's owned by NASCAR. Then the team owner registers, gets to use the number. That is why Richard Childress still has the number 3 in his possession through NASCAR, and that's why Austin Dillon gets to run it. Dale Earnhardt never owned it, but we just identify him obviously as number 3, like we did Rusty Wallace as number 2, Mark Martin as number 6 for so many years.
And we had to pull teeth to get number 5 when I came back in, because number 5 was always my number when I started racing. I've got 3 championships with number 5.
Yeah, out in California.
Actually 4.
So that's my little school. So Mike drove for Richard Childress, but he was the only teammate that Dale Earnhardt had over at Richard Childress Racing. Ron Hornaday drove for Dale Earnhardt in his truck.
Explain to his followers how we do the roundup, the RV channel, and some of the content and a little bit of that.
Well, we kind of got involved in YouTube about 2 years, well, really longer than that. We started posting videos under Skinner Roundup. So that's our channel, it's just Skinner Roundup, when you started doing Goodwood videos, because people thought they were kind of cool, and so we thought, well, let's post them on YouTube. We really didn't understand what we were doing. I just personally wanted to know how to find them for myself when I wanted to show off, look what Mike did in England. So then, when we kind of got wrapped up in this whole RV world, and we got a Featherlight bus, and we started having fun with Jimmy Adams over at Featherlight. We started meeting all our friends at Mountain Falls. We decided that we would do our own YouTube show called RV Roundup, which I educated myself. That's our playlist. So the channel is still Skinner Roundup. And so if you want to catch up on what we're doing in the RV world, all the parks, all the trips, we go to a lot of racetracks. We return to a lot of racetracks and do vintage racing now, or you throw
It's
in the green
mostly
flag.
glamping.
It's a lot of glamping. It's a lot of us arguing about how to park, how to dump, our RV stuff, but there's a lot of fun stuff in there. We try to...
Hurry up and get that bus hooked up. Get us a bottle of wine open here.
Correct.
Get the grill started.
Yeah.
Have you dumped? You know.
Well, we went on a 3-month tour with Tom Berenger, the movie actor. We go out to
His
Sturgis
wife,
with Rusty Wallace and Clint Boyer, and Mark Martin came last year, so we try to have them make special appearances for us. But it's Skinner Roundup on YouTube. If you guys will subscribe, that'd be great, because we need to catch up with Mitch. And it's free, and we have a lot of fun doing it. It's kind of what we're doing in retirement now.
And when Mike was actually racing this Goodwrench truck, I was too busy being born and being an infant to see it. But I do remember growing up seeing him race in the Toyota trucks, and Jack Sprague and Ron Hornaday, Rick Crawford, Dennis Setzer, guys like that. The truck series was my favorite thing. I love the truck series. I'm interested to know what you were doing during that time. We know most of you watching this video watch our other videos, and we want to know more about you. Like, we want you to comment, tell us about why this stuff is important to you. When was NASCAR imprinted on you? What's kept you interested this long? All that stuff. We're extremely active in the comments. If you say something, we're gonna read it. If you comment within the first couple days of a video being live, there's almost 100% chance that I'm gonna read it and reply to it. And we do remember people who interact very often. So speak up down there. We want to get to know you. When I was old enough to become aware of Mike Skinner, it was playing the NASCAR Thunder 2003 on PlayStation during those lightning challenges, whenever you have to avoid the crash at Talladega, and he's like explaining it. And I didn't know what unscathed meant. So Mike taught me a word. They used a big word in that thing, and 7-year-old me didn't know what that meant. All I knew was I had to not hit anybody, and I couldn't do it because that was one of the hardest ones. If you touched anything, you lost. I don't know if anybody else remembers that, but that's what I remember. If you happen to notice the hat and shirt that we were wearing in the videos, you can find those on StaplestonAutoworks.com. They are in limited supply. Some sizes we're out of. So if you see yours, that's the last of what we got. We pack and ship everything ourselves, just me and Logan, and it's part of how we support what we're doing, that and having ads and videos. So if you want to complain about the ads and the videos, would you rather have no videos at all? Because doing this stuff takes a long time. For example, we had to drive 3 hours to go to where Mike and Angie were to film the video, and then drive 3 hours home. And then it takes me a day to edit it. So there's like 2 or 3 days wrapped up in this thing. These things don't happen if we have other jobs. So that's what we do. If you'd like to show your support, you can check out the website. If you can't do anything on the website, it costs you absolutely nothing to leave a thumbs up and tell your friends. Parting words, I'll remind you to go watch the Larry McClure video that we referenced because it's very interesting. I'll link that in the description.